Hi guys, so going through the mini quiz from 416, we have the graph of f, and then we're also given that g is the integral from 1 to x of f of t dt. So if I want to find what g of 4 is and what g of negative 2 is, I'm going to go to my graph. G of 4 is going to equal the integral from 1 to 4 of f of t dt. So that's the area under the curve from 1 to 4. So the area under the curve from 1 to 4. So from 1 to 4. All right, so from 2 to 3 and 3 to 4, those two areas actually cancel each other out because you got one above the x-axis and one below. So one's positive, one's negative. So the only thing that I do have to find is the area of that trapezoid. So g of 4 is going to equal 1/2 from 1 to 2, that's a distance of 1. And then the height of that first base is 4 plus the height of that second base is 1. So g of 4 is going to equal 5/2. All right, now g of negative 2. So g of negative 2, I'm going to just change the color of my pen. G of negative 2 is going to equal the integral from 1 to negative 2 of f of t dt. Okay, so that's from 1 to negative 2, negative 2. So I start at 1 and I shade to negative 2, so I'm going in the opposite direction. So although the area is above the x-axis, because we're going in the opposite direction, it's going to be negative, and then 1/2 base times height. So my base is going to be 3, and my height is going to be 4. So that is g of negative 2 equals negative 6. Okay. Find the instantaneous rate of change. Instantaneous means the derivative. So we want g prime of 1. All right, so we're given what g of x is equal to. So g prime of x is going to equal f of x. So this is actually the graph of g prime. All right, so if we want to know what is g prime of 1, that's saying what's the graph at 1. So at 1, the graph is at 4. So g prime of 1 equals 4. All right, next one, we've got the absolute minimum. Absolute minimum. You should be checking CPs and EPs. All right, so my EPs are at negative 2 and 4. Oh, lucky us. We have what the values are at negative 2 and 4. That makes my life so much easier. So I want to find what g of negative 2 equals. Found it. Negative 6. I want to know what g of 4 is. Found it. 5/2. Okay? So now the next thing is we need to figure out what are my critical points. Critical points are where the derivative equals 0. So because this is the graph of the derivative equals 0 at 3. So g of 3. Okay? Now, is that going to be a maximum or a minimum? Well, g prime of 3 goes from positive zone to negative zone, just in case you can't see, because I scribbled all over the graph. At 3, it changes from positive to negative. So if we were going to do our bar chart, at 3, it goes from positive to negative. That means 3 is a relative max. So do we need to check 3? Nope, because it's a relative max. It's not going to be a minimum. All right, so now I look at my only two options, and I'm going to use this coordinate. So my absolute min is -6. Okay? How do I know? Justify my answer? I check the critical points and endpoints. All right, second derivative of g. Oh, let me just change my pen color so that when I look at it, I'll know I was on a different problem. So we'll do purple. All right, so the second derivative of g double prime, is not defined at x equals 1 and at x equals 2. So at x equals 1 and at x equals 2, x equals 1. Let me get rid of all those scribbles going on the graph too so that we can kind of see what's going on. All right. Apparently that little last remaining point. There we go. All right, so at x equals 1 and x equals 2, the second derivative is not defined. That's because this is going to be the derivative of this graph, aka the slope. The derivative does not exist at corners, cusps, vertical tangents, and discontinuities. Here we have two corners. So it's asking how many of these x values are actually points of inflection. Points of inflection. G double prime needs to changes sign. All right. So that is the key thing with points of inflection. So it's where the second derivative equals 0, it does not exist, and it has to change signs. So when I look at G double prime, that's the slope of that graph. So we're looking at 1 and at 2. The slope to the left of 1 is positive. The slope to the right of 1 is negative. The slope to the right of 2 is negative. So 2 is not a point of inflection. X equals 1 is a point of inflection because G double prime changes signs. All right, that's my justification. Okay, so that's it for that one.